The funny thing about a wife telling you another man can do things you can't is that she's almost always right. The trick is in what happens next. I heard the words on a Tuesday evening, somewhere between the second glass of wine she'd been nursing, and the moment the garage door let in the scent of rain-soaked asphalt. My wife, Elena, wasn't looking at me when she said it. Her eyes were fixed on her phone, a half smile playing on her lips that I hadn't seen directed my way in months. He does things you can't, Tom. The words landed in the quiet of our living room like stones dropped into still water. No splash, just a slow spreading ripple that threatened to drown the last 10 years of our marriage. I didn't react, not outwardly. That's the first thing you should know about me. Thomas Finn, 43 years old, husband of 14 years, father of 2, and a man who learned long ago that the loudest response is often silence. I've built 3 businesses from the ground up. I've negotiated contracts with men who would have sold their own mothers for an extra percentage point. I've sat across from bankruptcy and smiled in its face. So when my wife told me that another man, and we both knew she was talking about Marcus, her new personal trainer with the jawline of a superhero and the emotional availability of a golden retriever, could do things I couldn't, I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. I didn't even ask who. I smiled, and then I made one call. But to understand that call, you have to understand what came before. You have to understand the slow erosion that brought us to that Tuesday night. Because Elena wasn't wrong. Not entirely. Marcus probably could do things I couldn't. He could probably deadlift twice his body weight. He could probably listen to her talk about her feelings for 45 minutes without once checking his watch or mentally calculating quarterly projections. He could probably remember to put the toilet seat down without being reminded, and he probably said things like, "I hear you, and that must be really hard," without a trace of irony. I couldn't do those things. Not because I was incapable, but because I had spent 14 years believing that being a good husband meant something else. It meant showing up. It meant paying the mortgage. It meant fixing the garbage disposal at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night because it had started making that grinding noise again. It meant driving our daughter Lily to her flute lessons and our son Max to his soccer practices, even when I was running on 4 hours of sleep and 2 cups of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. It meant providing, protecting, persevering. What it had never meant, apparently, was being present. The cracks had been there for years, I realized later, small ones at first, the kind you don't notice until water starts seeping through. Elena had stopped reaching for my hand in the car somewhere around year 8. She had stopped laughing at my jokes, the same jokes that used to make her snort wine through her nose around year 10. By year 12, we had become roommates who happened to share a bed and a last name. We were efficient. We were polite. We were 2 people orbiting the same children, the same house, the same life without ever quite touching. And then Marcus arrived. He was 31, which Elena assured me was not that young, and he had forearms that looked like they'd been sculpted by a Renaissance artist who really liked veins. He had opened a boutique gym in our town, one of those places with exposed brick and chalkboard paint and motivational quotes about wolves and sheep, and Elena had joined on the recommendation of her friend Chloe. It's not about the workout, Elena had told me 3 months ago when I'd raised an eyebrow at the membership fee. It's about the accountability. Marcus really holds you accountable. I had nodded, written the check, and returned to my spreadsheet. Because that was what I did. I wrote checks. I solved problems. I kept the machine running. What I didn't do was notice that my wife had started wearing makeup to the gym. What I didn't do was ask why she was suddenly interested in protein powder and macro tracking. What I didn't do was look up from my phone long enough to see that the woman I'd married was starving for something I wasn't giving her. So no, Elena wasn't wrong. Marcus could do things I couldn't. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It's the greatest advantage a man can have. I smiled at my wife, and I picked up my phone. My fingers moved without hesitation, scrolling past the dozens of contacts I'd accumulated over 2 decades of business investors, lawyers, former partners, rivals I'd turned into allies, and allies I'd turned into friends. I stopped on a name I hadn't called in almost 4 years. Julian Cross. I pressed the green button before I could talk myself out of it. The phone rang twice, then 3 times. I counted the rings the way a man counts seconds before an explosion. 4, 5. Finn. Julian's voice was exactly as I remembered it, low, amused, and carrying the weight of a man who had seen everything and been surprised by none of it. It's been a while. You in trouble? Not yet, I said, but I might be about to cause some. There was a pause. I could hear Julian's exhale, the familiar sound of a man lighting a cigarette he'd promised his doctor he'd quit. I'm listening. I need a favor, I said, the kind you owe me. I don't owe you anything, Finn. We settled that score a long time ago. Then consider it a professional courtesy. I need you to find someone for me. A man named Marcus. Last name might be Delgado, might be something else. Personal trainer. Works at a gym called Iron and Oak on the west side of town. Another pause. This one longer. You want me to dig up dirt on your wife's boyfriend? The word hit harder than I expected. Boyfriend. I hadn't let myself think it, not even in the privacy of my own head, but Julian had always had a gift for naming the thing no one wanted to say. He's not her boyfriend, I said. He's her trainer, and I'm the Pope. What do you actually want, Tom? I closed my eyes. Behind them, I saw Elena's face as she looked at her phone. That half smile, that softness, that light I'd once been able to turn on with a single look across a crowded room. I saw Marcus's hand on her lower back in a gym selfie she'd posted last week. I saw the caption, so grateful for this man keeping me accountable. Accountable. I want to know everything, I said. Where he came from, who he owes, what he's hiding. Everyone's got something, Julian. Find me his something. Julian laughed, a dry sound like autumn leaves skittering across pavement. You haven't changed at all, have you? Still can't just talk to your wife like a normal human being. Still have to build a whole operation around your feelings. My feelings aren't the point. They never are with you. Fine, I'll make some calls. But you should know this isn't going to fix what's broken. Information won't make her love you again. I don't need her to love me, I said. I need her to see me. I hung up before he could argue. The next 3 days were a masterclass in patience. I went to work. I came home. I asked Elena about her day, and she gave me one-word answers. I helped Max with his algebra homework, and I listened to Lily practice her scales, and I did not mention Marcus. I did not mention the way Elena's phone buzzed at 9 o'clock every night, or the way she'd started turning it face down on the nightstand. I did not mention the new perfume she bought, the one that smelled like jasmine and regret. Instead, I smiled. I made dinner. I waited. Julian called on Friday morning, just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee. You're not going to believe this, he said. Try me. Marcus Delgado, 31 years old, born in Phoenix, Arizona. No criminal record, no outstanding warrants, no secret wife or hidden children. By all appearances, he's exactly what he says he is. Former collegiate wrestler who got a degree in kinesiology and decided to open a gym. I felt something shift in my chest. Relief? Disappointment? I wasn't sure. That's it? That's everything? I said by all appearances. Julian's voice dropped the way it did when he was about to deliver the real news. But here's the thing, Tom. Marcus Delgado doesn't own Iron and Oak. The LLC that owns the gym is registered to a holding company, and that holding company is registered to a blind trust, and that blind trust traces back to a woman named Patricia Holloway. The name didn't ring any bells. Who's Patricia Holloway? Former Patricia Vance. She's 67 years old, lives in Scottsdale, and she's worth approximately $42 million. Made her money in real estate. And here's the interesting part, her late husband, Richard Holloway, was a major donor to the same private college where Marcus Delgado got his degree. I set down my coffee cup. You're saying someone's bankrolling him. I'm saying Marcus Delgado didn't open a boutique gym in your town because he had a passion for fitness. I'm saying someone with deep pockets put him there. And I'm saying that someone might have had a reason for targeting your neighborhood specifically. The pieces started clicking together in my head, but the picture they formed didn't make sense. Targeting? Julian, it's a gym. It's not a conspiracy. Maybe Patricia Holloway is his grandmother. Maybe she just wanted to help him start a business. Maybe. But here's the thing I can't shake. I ran a background check on every other member of Iron and Oak, not just your wife. Everyone. And do you know what I found? Tell me. 17 members. 17. And every single one of them is married to a man who holds a significant position in a company that Patricia Holloway's late husband's investment firm has a stake in. Every single one. The coffee in my stomach turned to lead. I thought about the spreadsheet I'd been working on last night, the quarterly earnings report for Finn Holdings, the acquisition I'd been negotiating with a firm out of Chicago, the one that had been going suspiciously smoothly. What's the connection? I asked, though I was already afraid I knew. Patricia Holloway's investment firm is called Vance Capital, and Vance Capital is the silent partner in the Chicago firm you're trying to acquire from. The room tilted. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, staring at the grain of the wooden table. Elena had picked out that table. She dragged me to 3 different furniture stores before she found the perfect one, and I'd complained the entire time. That was 7 years ago. 7 years. And I could still remember the way she looked at me when she finally found it. Like I was the person she most wanted to share her excitement with. When had that stopped? When had I become someone she couldn't share things with? Tom? You still there? I'm here. My voice sounded strange, even to me. So what you're telling me is that Marcus, my wife's personal trainer, is a plant. Someone sent him here to get close to Elena, to get information, to compromise me. That's exactly what I'm telling you. And before you ask, no, I don't have proof that Elena knows. Her interactions with him have been entirely above board, at least from a digital footprint perspective. But Tom, he's been meeting her for coffee 3 times a week for the last 2 months. He's been mentoring her, and your wife has been talking. I felt the blood drain from my face. What kind of talking? The kind where she mentions that her husband is working on a big acquisition. The kind where she mentions the name of the firm. The kind where she mentions that he's been stressed, that he's been working late, that he's been distracted. Nothing overt. Nothing she would have realized was a problem. Just conversation. Just conversation. That was all it took. A few well-placed questions, a sympathetic ear, a handsome face. Elena hadn't been having an affair, not in the way I'd feared. She'd been having something far more dangerous. She'd been having a friendship with a man whose job was to extract information from her, one casual coffee at a time. And the worst part, the part that made me want to put my fist through the wall, she'd been right. Marcus could do something I couldn't. He could make my wife feel seen. He could make her feel heard. He could sit across from her and ask about her day and actually listen to the answer. And that vulnerability, that openness, had been weaponized against us both. Julian, I said slowly, I need you to do one more thing for me. I was afraid you'd say that. I need you to set up a meeting. Me and Patricia Holloway. Tomorrow, if possible. And I need you to not tell her what it's about. Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its usual sardonic edge. You're going to confront her? I'm going to have a conversation. The kind I should have been having with my wife for the last 4 years. Which is? I looked at the kitchen table, at the faint scratch Lily had put in it when she was 7, doing her homework with a pen that had bled through the paper, at the water ring from the mug Elena had set down without a coaster, back when she still drank coffee with me in the mornings. The kind where I finally show up, I said. The meeting with Patricia Holloway took place the next day at a restaurant in Scottsdale, one of those places with white tablecloths and waiters who spoke in whispers. I arrived 20 minutes early, wearing the suit I saved for board meetings and funerals. Julian had offered to come with me, but I'd declined. This was something I had to do alone. She was already there when I walked in. A small woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. She was sitting at a corner table, a glass of white wine in front of her. And she didn't stand when I approached. Mr. Finn, she said, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I sat down across from her. How long have you known about Marcus? From the beginning. I placed him there myself. She took a sip of her wine, unbothered. You have to understand, this wasn't personal. It was business. Your company is the last piece of a puzzle I've been trying to solve for 3 years. Your wife was simply the most efficient path. You used her. I used her loneliness. There's a difference. Patricia set down her glass and folded her hands on the table. Your wife is lonely, Mr. Finn. Deeply, profoundly lonely. She told Marcus things in 2 months that she probably hasn't told you in 5 years. Do you know what it's like to be married to a man who's never really there, who shows up for the big moments but misses all the small ones, who pays the bills but never asks how her day was? I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it. Because she wasn't wrong. That was the terrible, humiliating truth of it. Patricia Holloway, a woman who had been trying to destroy my company, my marriage, my life, was telling me something I should have heard from my wife years ago. I'm not here to apologize, Patricia continued. I'm a businesswoman. I saw an opportunity and I took it. But I will tell you this. I've been watching you for 3 years, Tom. I know your reputation. I know you're ruthless. I know you're smart. But I also know you're not stupid. You didn't come all the way to Scottsdale to confront me about corporate espionage. You could have gone to the authorities for that. She was right again. I came, I said slowly, because I realized something yesterday. My wife told me that Marcus could do things I couldn't, and she was right. But here's the thing I didn't understand until Julian made his calls. The things Marcus could do weren't the things I couldn't do. They were the things I wouldn't do, the things I chose not to do. Every day for years I chose not to be present. I chose not to listen. I chose not to see my wife. And that choice, my choice, is what created the opening you walked through. Patricia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. So what now? She asked. Now I go home. I talk to my wife. Not about Marcus, not about you, not about the acquisition. I talk to her about us. About the last 14 years. About the things I should have said, and the things I should have asked, and the person I should have been. I stood up, pulling my wallet from my pocket to leave cash on the table. And you call off your trainer. You find another way to get what you want. Because this one, it's done. I turned to leave, but Patricia's voice stopped me at the door. Mr. Then I looked back. I've destroyed a lot of men in my career. Smart men. Successful men. Men who thought they were untouchable. She picked up her wine glass, holding it to the light. You're the first one who ever made me feel like I might have been wrong about him. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. I walked out of the restaurant and got into my car, and I sat there for a long time with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the desert sky. Then I drove home. Elena was in the kitchen when I walked through the door. She was chopping vegetables for dinner, her back to me, her phone face up on the counter. No incoming messages, no missed calls. Hey, I said. She didn't turn around. Hey. I walked over to her slowly, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. I stopped beside her at the counter, close enough to smell her shampoo coconut and vanilla, the same one she'd been using since college. I need to tell you something, I said. She kept chopping. I'm listening. No, I said. You're not. You're chopping vegetables and waiting for me to say something that will inevitably disappoint you, because that's what I've trained you to expect. But I'm asking you to actually listen, just for 5 minutes. Her knife paused over a bell pepper. Slowly, she set it down and turned to face me. Her eyes were tired, wary, hopeful, despite everything. Elena, I know about Marcus. The color drained from her face. Tom, I can't explain. No. Let me finish. I took a breath. I know he's not just a trainer. I know he's been meeting you for coffee. I know he's been asking questions about my work. And I know that none of that is your fault. Her mouth opened, then closed. What are you talking about? Marcus was sent here by a woman named Patricia Holloway. She wanted information about my company and she used you to get it. She used your loneliness, Elena, your kindness, your willingness to trust someone who actually seemed to care. The knife clattered to the floor. Elena's hands were shaking. That's not... Marcus wouldn't... He would. He did, and you didn't know. You couldn't have known. Because you're not a spy, Elena. You're just a woman who wanted her husband to look at her the way a stranger did. Her eyes filled with tears. Tom, I'm so sorry. I never wanted. I just felt so invisible. I know. I reached out and took her hands. They were cold. And that's my fault. Not Marcus. Not Patricia Holloway. Mine. I made you invisible. I looked at you every day and saw a wife, a mother, a function. I stopped seeing you. A tear slipped down her cheek. Why are you telling me this now? Because I finally figured out what Marcus could do that I couldn't. It wasn't deadlifts or emotional availability or remembering to put the toilet seat down. It was this. I squeezed her hands. It was showing up, not as the provider or the problem solver or the guy who writes the checks, just as Tom, your Tom, the one you married. She was crying openly now, and so was I, though I hadn't noticed until I tasted salt on my lips. I don't know if I can fix this, I said. I don't know if 14 years of absence can be undone in a day, or a month, or even a year. But I know I want to try, if you'll let me. Elena pulled her hands free, and for one horrible moment I thought she was going to walk away. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. She buried her face in my chest, and I felt her shoulders shake. You idiot, she whispered. You absolute idiot. I know. I've been waiting for you to say something like this for 4 years. I know. Don't you dare let Marcus take credit for it. I laughed, the sound rough and broken. I won't. We stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the kitchen while the chopped vegetables dried out on the cutting board. And somewhere across town, in a gym with exposed brick and chalkboard walls, Marcus Delgado was probably packing up his things, getting ready to move on to his next assignment. But that didn't matter anymore, because my wife had told me another man could do things I couldn't, and she'd been right. Marcus could exploit vulnerability. He could manipulate loneliness. He could turn a woman's need to be seen into a weapon. But here's what he couldn't do. He couldn't stand in a kitchen on a Friday night holding the woman he'd almost lost and mean every single word of an apology 4 years overdue. He couldn't look at his wife, really look at her and see, not a function or a responsibility, but a person, a partner. The best thing that had ever happened to him. He couldn't make one call that changed everything. But I could, and I did.